Sometimes the most powerful moments in life happen when we least expect them. Picture this. You're standing in a room full of strangers, being told to remove the very symbol that represents years of dedication, sacrifice, and honor. Your heart pounds as you feel everything you've worked for slipping away. But then, in that darkest moment, someone notices something that changes everything. A small mark on your skin that tells a story bigger than any uniform ever could. This is the true story of courage, recognition, and how one tattoo became the bridge between disgrace and honor. It's about a woman who served her country in the shadows, only to have her moment of truth arrive when she least expected it. What happened next would remind everyone present that heroes don't always wear their medals on the outside. Sometimes they carry their greatest achievements beneath their skin. Get ready for a journey that proves how the smallest details can have the biggest impact, and how respect, once truly earned, can never really be taken away. The morning sun cast long shadows across the military base as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos walked through the corridors she had navigated countless times before. Her boots clicked against the polished floor with the same rhythm they had for 8 years of faithful service. Today felt different, though, heavy with an unexplained tension that made her stomach twist in knots. Maria had always been different from the other soldiers. While most recruits came from traditional military families or small towns with flags hanging from every porch, she had grown up in the rough neighborhoods of East Los Angeles. Her mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, and her father had disappeared before she could form any real memories of him. The military had been her escape, her chance to prove that where you come from doesn't determine where you go. Her specialization in intelligence operations had taken her places most soldiers never saw. She had spent months in classified locations, working with elite units that operated in the gray areas between official military action and covert operations. The work was dangerous, thankless, and often went unrecognized. But Maria thrived in that environment. She had a natural talent for reading people, understanding situations, and making split-second decisions that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The call came at 0800 hours sharp. Report to Colonel Davidson's office immediately. No explanation, no context, just an order that made her blood run cold. Maria had never been called to the colonel's office for anything good. In her experience, when senior officers wanted to see you without warning, someone had made a serious mistake, and you were either in trouble or about to clean up someone else's mess. She knocked on the door and waited for permission to enter. Colonel Davidson was a man in his 50s who had earned his rank through decades of careful political maneuvering rather than battlefield heroics. He had the soft look of someone who spent more time in air-conditioned offices than training grounds, and his handshake always felt weak and uncertain. Maria had never trusted him, but she had always followed his orders without question. "Sergeant Santos, please have a seat," he said without looking up from the papers scattered across his desk. The formal use of her rank, instead of a casual greeting, confirmed her worst fears. Something was seriously wrong. "Sir, you wanted to see me?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite the growing anxiety in her chest. Colonel Davidson finally looked up, his eyes cold and calculating. "We have a problem, Sergeant. A serious problem that involves your conduct and your future in this military." Maria felt her heart skip a beat. Conduct issues could end careers, destroy reputations, and ruin lives. She mentally reviewed every action, every decision, every interaction from the past several months, searching for something that might have caused trouble. She came up empty. "Sir, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Could you please be more specific?" The colonel leaned back in his chair and studied her with the expression of someone who had already made up his mind. "We've received reports about your behavior during the recent joint training exercise in Nevada. Specifically, reports about inappropriate relationships with personnel from other units." The accusation hit her like a physical blow. Maria had participated in the Nevada exercise just 6 weeks ago, a complex training scenario that involved multiple branches of the military working together on simulated combat operations. It had been challenging, exhausting work that pushed everyone to their limits. She had performed exceptionally well, earning praise from instructors and respect from her peers. "Sir, I need to respectfully disagree with those reports. I maintained complete professionalism throughout the entire exercise. I followed every regulation and protocol exactly as required." Colonel Davidson pulled out a manila folder and opened it slowly, as if he was enjoying the drama of the moment. "According to these statements, you were seen engaging in intimate behavior with at least 2 different officers from the Air Force contingent. There are also reports of drinking to excess and compromising operational security by discussing classified information in inappropriate settings. Each word felt like a knife being twisted deeper into her chest. Maria knew with absolute certainty that none of these accusations were true. She barely drank alcohol, never mixed personal relationships with professional duties, and had never compromised security protocols in her entire career. Someone was lying, but she couldn't understand why or who would want to destroy her reputation. Sir, those allegations are completely false. I can provide detailed accounts of my activities during every day of that exercise. I maintain detailed logs, as I always do, and there are witnesses who can verify my professional conduct throughout the entire operation. The colonel closed the folder with a snap that seemed to echo through the small office. The sources of these reports are credible, Sergeant Santos. They come from respected officers who have no reason to fabricate stories about your behavior. What I need to determine now is whether you're going to accept responsibility for your actions or continue to deny what multiple witnesses have confirmed. Maria realized with growing horror that this wasn't really an investigation at all. The colonel had already decided she was guilty. This meeting was just a formality, a way to make her confession part of the official record, but she refused to admit to things she hadn't done, regardless of the consequences. Sir, I cannot and will not accept responsibility for actions I did not take. If there are specific witnesses making these claims, I have the right to face my accusers and present evidence in my own defense. This is still the United States military, and even accused soldiers have rights under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Colonel Davidson's expression hardened into something approaching hatred. Rights, Sergeant? Let me tell you about rights. You have the right to remain silent while I decide whether to recommend you for court-martial or simply process your discharge for conduct unbecoming. You have the right to pack your personal belongings while security personnel ensure you don't remove any government property. And right now, you have the right to remove that uniform that you've clearly dishonored. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fired weapon. Maria stared at the colonel, trying to process what he was demanding. Remove her uniform? Here? Now? In his office? The request was so far outside normal military protocol that she wondered if he had lost his mind. Sir, I don't understand what you're asking me to do. I'm not asking, Sergeant. I'm giving you a direct order. Remove that uniform immediately. You've lost the right to wear it, and I want it turned in to supply before you leave this base. Strip it off right now, every piece of it, and place it on my desk. Maria felt the room spinning around her. This was beyond humiliation. This was a complete violation of military protocol and basic human dignity. Even soldiers facing court-martial weren't subjected to this kind of treatment. But she was trapped between following an illegal order and facing even more serious charges for disobeying a direct command from a superior officer. Her hands trembling slightly, she began to unbutton her uniform jacket. Each button felt like a small defeat, a piece of her identity being stripped away along with the fabric. The jacket fell to the floor with a soft thud that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet office. Next came her uniform shirt, leaving her standing in just her undershirt and uniform pants. As she bent to remove her boots, Maria noticed that Colonel Davidson was watching her with an expression that made her skin crawl. There was something predatory in his eyes, something that suggested this degrading display was more than just professional discipline. She realized with sickening clarity that this entire situation might not be about the false accusations at all. This might be about something much more personal and much more dangerous. The boots came off next, followed by her socks. She stood barefoot on the cold office floor, feeling more vulnerable than she had ever felt in her entire life. The uniform pants were the last piece, and as she folded them carefully and placed them on the colonel's desk, she felt like she was surrendering the last piece of her military identity. Standing there in just her basic military undershirt and shorts, Maria tried to maintain some dignity despite the circumstances, but she could feel her eyes burning with tears that she refused to let fall. She had given 8 years of her life to this institution, had risked her safety in classified operations that would never be publicly acknowledged, and had always maintained the highest standards of conduct and performance. This was how it ended. Stripped naked in a colonel's office based on lies and false accusations. There, she said quietly. Is there anything else you need from me, sir? Colonel Davidson looked at the pile of uniform components on his desk and smiled with a satisfaction that confirmed Maria's worst suspicions about his motivations. Actually, yes. I need you to sign this statement acknowledging your misconduct and accepting responsibility for your actions. It will make the paperwork much simpler. Maria looked at the document he was offering her but didn't reach for it. I won't sign a false confession, sir. Not now, not ever. Then you're going to make this much more difficult than it needs to be, the colonel replied. But that's your choice. Security will escort you off the base within the hour. Don't bother trying to contact anyone about this situation. These accusations come from very high levels, and no one is going to risk their own career to help someone who can't even admit their own mistakes. As Maria stood there in her underwear, she felt something inside her breaking that she wasn't sure could ever be repaired. Her military career was over, her reputation was destroyed, and her future was completely uncertain. 8 years of dedicated service erased by lies and corruption that she couldn't even begin to understand or fight against. But even in this moment of complete defeat, Maria Santos refused to surrender her integrity. She might lose her career, her income, and her identity as a soldier, but she would not lose her self-respect by confessing to crimes she had never committed. Whatever happened next, she would face it with her head held high and her conscience clear. The colonel was already reaching for his phone to call security when something completely unexpected happened. The office door opened without a knock, and someone stepped inside who would change everything Maria thought she knew about her situation. The real story was just beginning, and it would prove that sometimes the most important battles are won not with weapons or tactics, but with the simple power of truth and recognition. The door opened with such authority that both Maria and Colonel Davidson froze in place. Military protocol dictated that no one entered a superior officer's closed door without permission, but whoever had just walked in clearly operated by different rules. Maria turned her head slightly, still standing in her underwear, trying to see who had interrupted this humiliating scene. General Patricia Hayes stepped into the office with the confidence of someone who had earned her stars through decades of exceptional service. She was a woman in her late 50s, with silver hair pulled back in a regulation bun and eyes that seemed to miss absolutely nothing. Maria recognized her immediately. General Hayes was a legend in the intelligence community, known for her brilliant tactical mind and her unwavering commitment to protecting the soldiers under her command. "Colonel Davidson," the general said in a voice that could cut through steel, "I was walking past your office when I heard raised voices. Is there some kind of problem here?" Colonel Davidson immediately stood at attention, his face draining of color. "General Hayes, ma'am." "No problem at all. Just handling some routine disciplinary matters with Staff Sergeant Santos." General Hayes looked around the office, taking in the scene with the sharp attention to detail that had made her one of the most respected officers in the military. Her gaze moved from the colonel's nervous expression to the pile of uniform components on his desk, and finally to Maria standing nearly naked in the center of the room.
"Routine disciplinary matters," she repeated slowly.
"Colonel, in 35 years of military service, I have never seen routine discipline that required a soldier to remove her uniform in an officer's private office. Perhaps you could explain exactly what kind of misconduct would warrant this particular response?" Maria felt a surge of hope for the first time since this nightmare had begun. General Hayes was known for her fairness and her refusal to tolerate any form of abuse or misconduct within the ranks. If anyone could see through whatever game Colonel Davidson was playing, it would be her. "Ma'am, Sergeant Santos has been accused of serious misconduct during the recent joint training exercise in Nevada," Colonel Davidson said, his voice now noticeably less confident. "Multiple witnesses have come forward with reports of inappropriate behavior, security violations, and conduct unbecoming a non-commissioned officer." General Hayes raised an eyebrow and walked closer to Maria, studying her with the intensity of someone reading a complex military briefing. "Sergeant Santos, is it? I don't believe we've been formally introduced, but your name seems familiar. Have we worked together before?" Maria tried to maintain her composure despite her state of undress. "No, ma'am, not directly, but I've served in several operations that fell under your overall command authority. Intelligence gathering in classified locations, mostly working with special operations units." "Interesting," the general replied. "Colonel Davidson, I'm curious about these accusations. Do you have written statements from the witnesses? Documentation of the alleged security violations? Any physical evidence to support these serious charges?" Colonel Davidson shifted uncomfortably and reached for the manila folder on his desk.
"Yes, ma'am. I have detailed reports from multiple sources."
"All very credible officers who observed Sergeant Santos's inappropriate behavior firsthand." "I see. And based on these reports, you decided that the appropriate response was to order her to strip naked in your office?" "Colonel, I've been in this military longer than you've been alive, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that this is not standard protocol for handling misconduct allegations." Maria could hear the steel in General Hayes' voice getting sharper with each word. Colonel Davidson was clearly in serious trouble. But Maria wasn't sure if that would be enough to save her own career. The damage might already be done, regardless of who was asking questions now. Ma'am, I was simply ensuring that government property was returned before Sergeant Santos was processed out of the service, Colonel Davidson said, his explanation sounding weak even to his own ears. Government property, General Hayes repeated. Colonel, unless I'm mistaken, regulations require that uniform items be turned in through proper supply channels, not stripped off in front of superior officers. This appears to be something else entirely. General Hayes walked around Maria slowly, and Maria noticed that the general's attention seemed to focus on something specific. As she completed her circle, the general stopped directly in front of Maria and looked her straight in the eyes. Sergeant Santos, I need you to turn around slowly. Maria complied, unsure what the general was looking for, but willing to follow any order that might help clarify this situation. As she turned, she felt the general's gaze focusing on her left shoulder blade, where a detailed tattoo was partially visible beneath her undershirt. Stop, General Hayes said quietly. Sergeant, that tattoo on your shoulder. May I see it more clearly? Maria hesitated for a moment, then lifted the back of her undershirt to expose the full design. It was a detailed rendering of the Ghost Recon skull logo, surrounded by intricate military symbols and dates that marked specific operations. The artwork was beautifully done, but more importantly, it told the story of Maria's real military service in ways that her official record never could. General Hayes studied the tattoo with intense concentration, her expression changing from professional curiosity to something approaching amazement. She leaned closer, examining the specific details and symbols that most people would dismiss as decorative elements. Those dates, she said softly. Operation Nightfall, Operation Silent Thunder, Operation Desert Ghost. Sergeant Santos, these are classified operations that officially never happened. How exactly do you know about them? Maria felt her heart racing. The tattoo had been a personal memorial to the most important missions of her career, operations that had required absolute secrecy and had never been acknowledged publicly. She had never expected anyone to recognize the significance of those specific dates and code names. Ma'am, I was part of the intelligence support teams for those operations. I spent 14 months working with Ghost Recon units in various classified locations. The tattoo represents the most meaningful service of my military career. General Hayes straightened up slowly, her expression now completely transformed. The professional skepticism had been replaced by something much more personal. Sergeant Santos, I authorized those operations. I planned them, I supervised their execution, and I wrote the after-action reports.
There were only 17 soldiers who participated in all 3 of those missions, and I personally approved the commendations for every single one of them.
Colonel Davidson looked confused and increasingly nervous. General Hayes, I don't understand what classified operations have to do with the misconduct charges against Sergeant Santos. What they have to do, General Hayes said, turning to face the colonel with an expression that could freeze fire, is that Staff Sergeant Santos is one of the most highly decorated intelligence operatives in the history of this command. Her service record includes citations for valor, exceptional performance under hostile conditions, and security clearances that are so high I can't even discuss them in front of you.
Maria felt the world shifting around her.
She had never known that General Hayes was aware of her specific contributions to those operations. Most intelligence work was anonymous by design, and she had assumed that her individual efforts had been lost in the larger machinery of military bureaucracy. Furthermore, General Hayes continued, the Nevada exercise that forms the basis of these misconduct allegations was actually a cover operation for a classified intelligence gathering mission. Sergeant Santos wasn't there for training. She was there working under my direct authority on matters of national security that are so sensitive they require congressional oversight. Colonel Davidson's face was now completely pale. Ma'am, I had no knowledge of any classified operations during the Nevada exercise. The reports I received indicated standard training protocols. Of course you had no knowledge, General Hayes replied. That was the entire point. Sergeant Santos was operating under deep cover, maintaining her normal military identity while conducting intelligence work that I cannot and will not discuss further. The officers who filed these misconduct reports saw exactly what they were supposed to see. A soldier who appeared to be socializing inappropriately while actually gathering critical intelligence information. Maria's mind was reeling as she tried to process what was happening. The accusations that had seemed to destroy her career were actually proof that she had done her job perfectly. The behavior that Colonel Davidson had described as misconduct was actually evidence of her professional excellence. General Hayes, Colonel Davidson said weakly, I had no way of knowing about classified operations. I was simply responding to credible reports from respected officers. Colonel, the problem is not that you received false reports. The problem is how you chose to handle them. Even if these accusations were true, ordering a soldier to strip naked in your office is sexual harassment, abuse of power, and a violation of approximately 15 different military regulations. Your conduct here today is grounds for immediate court-martial. Maria felt a surge of vindication so strong it nearly brought tears to her eyes. Not only were the charges against her false, but the man who had tried to destroy her career was now facing serious consequences for his own misconduct. Sergeant Santos, General Hayes said, please put your uniform back on. You are not being discharged, you are not facing disciplinary action, and you will receive a formal apology from this command for the treatment you have received today. As Maria began to dress, she could feel the power dynamic in the room shifting completely. Colonel Davidson was no longer the authority figure controlling her fate. Instead, he was a disgraced officer facing the end of his own career, while Maria was being restored to her rightful position. Colonel Davidson, General Hayes continued, you will immediately report to the Inspector General's office to face formal charges for sexual harassment, abuse of authority, and conduct unbecoming an officer. You will also provide me with the complete file of accusations against Sergeant Santos so that I can determine who else was involved in his conspiracy. Conspiracy? Colonel Davidson asked. Oh yes, Colonel. This was not a simple misunderstanding. Someone wanted to destroy Sergeant Santos's career, and they used you to do it. What I need to figure out now is why someone would go to such elaborate lengths to target one of our most valuable intelligence assets. As Maria finished buttoning her uniform jacket, she realized that her ordeal was far from over. Someone had deliberately tried to destroy her career, and General Hayes clearly intended to find out who and why. The real investigation was just beginning, and it would uncover truths that none of them could have imagined. 2 hours later, Maria found herself in a secure conference room deep within the command headquarters, a place she had never seen before despite her years on the base. The room had no windows, and the walls were lined with equipment that suggested it was designed to prevent any kind of electronic surveillance. General Hayes sat across from her at a polished table with 2 other officers Maria didn't recognize. Sergeant Santos, General Hayes began. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Before we continue, I need you to understand that everything discussed in this room falls under special compartmented information protocols. You cannot discuss any of this with anyone, not your family, not your friends, not even other military personnel, unless they are specifically cleared for this conversation. Maria nodded, her mind still struggling to process the dramatic reversal of her situation. Just hours ago, she had been facing discharge in disgrace. Now she was being briefed on classified information by a general and 2 officers whose rank insignia indicated they operated at levels far above normal military hierarchy. The accusations against you were not random, General Hayes continued. They were part of a carefully planned operation designed to remove you from active duty and discredit your intelligence work. Someone wanted you neutralized, and they nearly succeeded. One of the other officers, a woman with the bearing of someone accustomed to dealing with life and death situations, opened a thick folder and spread several photographs across the table. Sergeant Santos, during your work in Nevada, you gathered intelligence about a weapons trafficking network that operates through military contractors. What you discovered was much more significant than we initially realized. Maria looked at the photographs, recognizing several faces from the Nevada exercise. These were the officers who had allegedly filed complaints about her conduct. Seeing them arranged this way with connecting lines and detailed annotations made it clear that they were part of something much larger than a training exercise. The network you uncovered, the second officer continued, involves the theft and illegal sale of advanced military technology. We're talking about weapons systems, encryption devices, and tactical equipment worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But more importantly, some of this technology has ended up in the hands of foreign intelligence services and terrorist organizations. General Hayes leaned forward, her expression grave. The people you were watching in Nevada panicked when they realized how much you had learned about their operation. They couldn't simply eliminate you without drawing attention, so they decided to destroy your credibility instead. If you were discharged for misconduct, anything you reported would be dismissed as the desperate lies of a disgraced soldier. Maria felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place in her mind. The Nevada exercise had been unusual from the beginning. She had been given assignments that seemed routine, but had led her to observe patterns of behavior that didn't make sense. Officers having meetings that weren't on any official schedule, equipment being moved through unofficial channels, and conversations that stopped abruptly when she appeared. The sophisticated thing about their plan, General Hayes said, was that they used your own cover identity against you. You were supposed to appear to be socializing inappropriately while actually gathering intelligence. They took that necessary deception and turned it into evidence of misconduct.
But how did they know what I was really doing in Nevada? Maria asked. I thought my intelligence work was compartmented information that only a few people knew about. The third officer, who had been silent until now, spoke in a voice that carried the authority of someone accustomed to uncovering secrets.
That's the most troubling part of this situation, Sergeant Santos. Someone with very high security clearance had to have provided information about your real mission. This conspiracy involves people at senior levels of the military hierarchy. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. If people with high-level clearances were involved in weapons trafficking and had tried to destroy her career to protect themselves, then her life could be in serious danger. These weren't just corrupt officers skimming money from supply budgets. These were people capable of treason who had already demonstrated their willingness to destroy anyone who threatened their operation. Are you saying that I'm in physical danger? She asked. We're saying that you've uncovered something much bigger than a simple corruption scheme, General Hayes replied. The weapons trafficking network you discovered has connections to foreign intelligence services. The people involved have already shown they're willing to risk everything to protect their operation. Yes, you could be in danger, which is why we need to move quickly. General Hayes pulled out another folder, this one marked with security classifications that Maria had never seen before. We need your help, Sergeant Santos. Your intelligence work in Nevada was exceptional, but it was only the beginning. We need you to continue the investigation, but this time with full support and proper backup. What kind of investigation? Maria asked, though she was beginning to understand that her career was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. We need you to go undercover again, but this time among the people who tried to destroy you. We want them to believe their plan worked. We want them to think you've been successfully discredited and removed from the picture. Then, when they let their guard down, we'll have you in position to gather the evidence we need to bring down the entire network.
Maria stared at the general, trying to process what was being asked of her.
You want me to pretend that I've been discharged in disgrace, then infiltrate a weapons trafficking network that already knows I was investigating them?
Not exactly, the first female officer said.
We want you to let them recruit you. People who have been dishonorably discharged from the military, especially intelligence specialists, are valuable assets for criminal organizations. They have training, security clearances that take time to be revoked, and motivation to strike back at the system that betrayed them. The plan was beginning to make sense, but Maria could see how dangerous it would be. If I'm supposedly discharged in disgrace, how do I maintain my security clearances and my status in the military? Officially, you will be discharged, General Hayes said. Colonel Davidson's actions today will be used to support a claim of sexual harassment that forces your separation from service. Your real status will be known only to the 4 people in this room and 2 others who have been cleared for this operation. So I'll actually be discharged from the military I've served for 8 years, with no guarantee that I'll ever be reinstated, in order to infiltrate a criminal network that has already tried to destroy me once? Sergeant Santos, General Hayes said quietly, I understand what we're asking of you. This is beyond anything that should be expected of any soldier. But the people you discovered are responsible for American military technology being used against American soldiers in combat zones around the world. They're not just stealing equipment, they're getting our people killed. Maria looked around the table at the 3 officers who were waiting for her decision. Each of them had decades of experience in intelligence and military operations. They understood the risks better than she did, and they were still convinced that this plan was worth pursuing. What happened to Colonel Davidson? She asked. If he's going to be court-martialed for sexual harassment, that might expose this entire operation. Colonel Davidson has been transferred to administrative duties pending investigation, the quiet officer said. He believes he's being punished for procedural violations in handling your case. He has no idea that his actions are being used as cover for a larger operation. As far as he knows, you're just another soldier who got caught up in a bureaucratic mess. And what about the officers who filed false reports against me? If they think their plan worked, won't they expect me to be angry about being discharged? Won't they be suspicious if I'm not trying to get revenge? Actually, General Hayes said with a slight smile, we're counting on you being angry. The role you'll be playing requires someone who has legitimate grievances against the military establishment, someone who feels betrayed by the system she served faithfully, someone who might be motivated to sell military secrets to the highest bidder. Maria realized that the plan was more sophisticated than she had initially understood. Her real emotions about being falsely accused and humiliated would actually strengthen her cover story. She wouldn't have to pretend to be angry about military injustice. She would simply have to direct that anger toward the purposes of the investigation. "If I agree to do this," she said, "what protection will I have? If these people are sophisticated enough to orchestrate false misconduct charges, they're certainly capable of discovering that I'm working undercover. You'll have backup that you won't see, but that will always be close enough to intervene if necessary," General Hayes assured her. "More importantly, you'll have communications equipment that appears to be standard civilian electronics, but that will allow us to monitor your situation continuously. And if something goes wrong, if they discover what I'm really doing—" General Hayes was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Sergeant Santos, I can't promise you that this mission won't be dangerous. What I can promise you is that if you succeed, you'll prevent American military technology from being used to kill American soldiers. You'll help bring down a network that has caused immeasurable damage to national security. And you'll have the satisfaction of knowing that you served your country in the highest traditions of military service." Maria looked down at her hands, still trying to fully grasp what was being offered to her. A few hours ago, her military career had seemed to be over. Now she was being asked to undertake the most important and dangerous mission of her life. "When would this operation begin?" she asked. "Your discharge paperwork will be processed within 48 hours, the quiet officer said. "We expect the trafficking network to make contact with you within a week of your official separation from service. They'll probably approach you through intermediaries, people who seem to be offering legitimate employment opportunities." "And how long would this assignment last?" "However long it takes," General Hayes said. "This could be resolved in a few months, or it could take more than a year. Deep cover operations don't follow predictable timelines." Maria thought about her mother, who would be devastated to learn that her daughter had been discharged from the military in disgrace. She thought about her friends and colleagues, who would believe that she had violated every principle they shared. She thought about the officers who had tried to destroy her career, who would believe that their plan had succeeded completely. But she also thought about American soldiers in combat zones who were being killed by weapons that should never have left American military installations. She thought about the oath she had taken when she enlisted, promising to defend her country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And she thought about the ghost Recon tattoo on her shoulder, which represented her commitment to serving in the shadows without recognition or glory. "I'll do it," she said quietly. "I'll take the assignment." General Hayes nodded with an expression that mixed relief with concern. "Thank you, Sergeant Santos. Your country will never be able to properly thank you for what you're about to do, but I want you to know that what happens next will be remembered by the people who matter most." As Maria left the secure conference room, she realized that she was walking away from everything she had known about her life and her identity. Within 48 hours, she would officially be a disgraced former soldier with no apparent future and a burning desire for revenge against the military that had betrayed her. But in reality, she would be undertaking the most important mission of her career, one that would test every skill she had learned and every principle she believed in. The real adventure was just beginning, and it would take her places she could never have imagined. 3 weeks after her official discharge, Maria Santos sat in a dingy coffee shop in downtown Los Angeles, wearing civilian clothes that felt foreign after 8 years in uniform. Her hair had grown out slightly from regulation length, and she had deliberately allowed herself to look tired and defeated. To anyone watching, she appeared to be exactly what her fabricated story claimed, a disgraced former soldier struggling to adjust to civilian life. The approach came exactly as General Hayes had predicted. A woman in her 30s, professionally dressed and carrying herself with the confidence of someone successful in business, approached Maria's table with a friendly smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Excuse me, are you Maria Santos?" the woman asked. "I'm Jennifer Caldwell from Pacific Strategic Solutions. We spoke on the phone yesterday about potential employment opportunities." Maria looked up with the expression of someone desperate for any chance at legitimate work. "Yes, that's me. Thank you for meeting with me on such short notice." Jennifer sat down across from Maria and studied her with the practiced assessment of someone who made a living evaluating people. "I have to be honest, Maria. Your military record is impressive, but the circumstances of your discharge create some challenges for conventional employment. Most defense contractors are very cautious about hiring people with misconduct flags in their background." "I understand," Maria replied, allowing real bitterness to creep into her voice. "It doesn't matter that the charges were false. It doesn't matter that I gave 8 years of my life to serve this country. All that matters is what some corrupt colonel wrote in my file." Jennifer nodded sympathetically. "Unfortunately, that's exactly right."
However, there are opportunities for someone with your skills and experience if you're willing to be flexible about the nature of the work involved.
What kind of flexibility are we talking about? Maria asked, playing the role of someone who was curious but cautious.
The kind of work that values results over paperwork, Jennifer said carefully. Organizations that care more about what you can do than what your official record says you did. International businesses that operate in challenging environments where conventional rules don't always apply. Maria knew she was being recruited for something illegal, but she needed to let Jennifer believe that she was being gradually convinced rather than eager to participate. I'm not sure I understand what you're suggesting. Jennifer smiled and pulled out a business card with minimal information on it. Why don't we meet somewhere more private tomorrow? I can explain some specific opportunities that might interest you. There's a restaurant called Marco's on Sunset Boulevard. Can you meet me there at 7 in the evening? I suppose I can do that, Maria said, taking the card.
But I should tell you that I'm not interested in doing anything that would get me in more trouble than I'm already in.
Of course not, Jennifer replied. We're talking about legitimate business opportunities.
International consulting work that takes advantage of your military experience and security background. The kind of work that pays very well because it requires people with specialized skills and discretion. After Jennifer left, Maria walked 6 blocks to a predetermined location where she could safely communicate with her handlers. Using equipment disguised as a standard smartphone, she transmitted details of the meeting and her assessment of Jennifer Caldwell's approach. The response came back within minutes. Jennifer Caldwell was a known associate of the weapons trafficking network, responsible for recruiting former military personnel for various illegal activities. The restaurant meeting would likely be a more detailed screening process, designed to determine whether Maria could be trusted with sensitive information. That evening, Maria spent hours preparing for the next day's meeting. She rehearsed her cover story, reviewed the details of her fabricated financial situation, and practiced projecting the right combination of desperation and useful skills. The key was to appear valuable enough to recruit, while not seeming too eager or too experienced in criminal activities. The restaurant meeting began much like the coffee shop encounter, with Jennifer asking seemingly casual questions about Maria's background, her current situation, and her attitude toward her former military service. But as the evening progressed, the conversation became more specific and more revealing. The organization I work with, Jennifer said over dessert, provides specialized services to clients around the world. Sometimes these clients need equipment that's difficult to obtain through conventional channels. Sometimes they need information that's not available through public sources. And sometimes they need people who can operate effectively in complex situations. What kind of equipment? Maria asked. Military hardware mostly. Communications gear, surveillance equipment, tactical weapons systems. The kind of equipment that's routinely used by American forces but that's not available for purchase by foreign governments or private organizations. Maria pretended to consider this information carefully. Are you talking about stolen military equipment? Jennifer laughed softly. I'm talking about equipment that finds its way into international markets through various channels. Our clients don't care about the specific provenance of the items they purchase. They care about quality, reliability, and discretion. And what would my role be in this kind of operation? Someone with your background could be invaluable in several ways, Jennifer explained. You understand military equipment better than most civilians. You know how military procurement systems work, and most importantly, you have contacts within the military who might be willing to provide information or access in exchange for financial compensation. Maria felt a surge of anger at the suggestion that she would betray her former colleagues for money, but she forced herself to maintain her cover. My contacts in the military aren't exactly friendly toward me right now. I'm not sure how much help they would be. You'd be surprised, Jennifer said. People's attitudes change when they realize how much money is involved. We're not talking about small-time theft or corruption. We're talking about millions of dollars in revenue, with substantial compensation for everyone involved. How substantial? Maria asked. Jennifer pulled out a small notepad and wrote down a figure, then slid it across the table to Maria. The number was larger than Maria's total military salary for her entire 8-year career. That would be your compensation for one successful operation, Jennifer said quietly. Someone with your skills and access could easily complete several operations per year. Maria stared at the number, allowing herself to appear genuinely shocked. This is more money than I could make in 10 years at any legitimate job. Exactly. The question is whether you're interested in financial security or whether you're still loyal to the military system that betrayed you. Maria took a deep breath and made her decision. What kind of operation are we talking about? What would I actually have to do? Jennifer smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had successfully completed a recruitment. There's a military facility about 2 hours north of here. They're scheduled to receive a shipment of advanced communications equipment next week. We need someone to provide us with details about the security arrangements, the delivery schedule, and the storage procedures once the equipment arrives on base. You want me to help you steal military equipment from an active military installation? Maria asked, making sure her voice carried the right mixture of shock and excitement. We want you to provide information, Jennifer corrected. Other people will handle the actual acquisition of the equipment. Your job would be to ensure that our people know exactly when and how to proceed without unnecessary risks. Maria knew that she was being asked to facilitate what amounted to an armed robbery of a military facility. The communications equipment Jennifer was discussing was probably worth millions of dollars and was almost certainly destined for combat units that needed reliable field communications to stay alive. How would I get information about security arrangements at a military base? I've been discharged. I don't have access to military facilities anymore. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get back onto a base when you know the right people and you have a plausible reason for being there, Jennifer said. Former soldiers visit military facilities all the time for various reasons. Medical appointments, administrative issues, meetings with former colleagues. With the right preparation and documentation, you could spend several hours on base gathering the information we need. Maria realized that the network was much more sophisticated than she had initially understood. They weren't just stealing equipment opportunistically. They were conducting detailed surveillance and planning operations with military precision. This wasn't a criminal gang. This was an organized conspiracy with significant resources and inside knowledge. When would this operation take place? Maria asked. If you agree to participate, we would need the intelligence information within the next week. The actual equipment acquisition would happen within 2 weeks of receiving your report. And if I provide this information, I would receive the compensation we discussed? Half up front, as soon as you provide useful intelligence. The other half after our people successfully acquire the equipment. We believe in incentivizing success. Maria nodded slowly, as if she was making a difficult decision. I need some time to think about this. This is a big step, and I want to make sure I understand all the risks involved. Of course, Jennifer said. But I should mention that opportunities like this don't remain available indefinitely. We have several potential recruits for this operation, and we'll be moving forward with whoever commits first. How do I contact you when I've made my decision? Jennifer handed her another card, this one with only a phone number. Call that number and leave a message saying either yes or no. If you say yes, someone will contact you within 24 hours with detailed instructions. If you say no, we'll simply part ways and wish you the best of luck in your civilian career. As Maria walked back to her apartment, she felt the weight of what she was being asked to do. She would have to provide information that would be used to steal American military equipment that might eventually be used against American soldiers. But she also knew that this was exactly the opportunity that General Hayes had expected. The real challenge would be providing enough useful information to maintain her cover while ensuring that the actual theft never took place. She would need to walk a very fine line between appearing to betray her country and actually protecting it. That night, she transmitted a detailed report of her conversation with Jennifer, including the location and timing of the planned theft. By morning, she knew. Military security at the target facility would be quietly enhanced without any obvious changes that might alert the trafficking network. 2 days later, Maria called the number Jennifer had given her and left a simple message, yes. Within hours, her phone rang with instructions for the most dangerous phase of her mission. She was about to infiltrate an active military facility while pretending to betray everything she had spent her adult life protecting. The margin for error was essentially zero, and the consequences of failure could include her death. But as she prepared for what might be the most important mission of her life, Maria thought about the ghost Recon tattoo on her shoulder and the oath she had taken to defend her country against all enemies. Some enemies wore foreign uniforms and carried weapons openly. Others wore business suits and recruited disgraced soldiers in expensive restaurants. Either way, she was ready to face them. The morning of the planned intelligence gathering operation, Maria dressed carefully in clothes that would help her blend in at the military base while carrying the sophisticated surveillance equipment her handlers had provided. The equipment looked like standard civilian electronics: a tablet computer, a smartphone, and a small digital camera, but each device was capable of recording conversations, photographing documents, and transmitting encrypted data in real time. Her target was Fort McKinley, a medium-sized installation that specialized in communications and electronic warfare training. According to the information Jennifer had provided, the base was expecting delivery of prototype communications equipment that was still in development but had been fast-tracked for combat testing in overseas operations. Maria's cover story was simple but believable. She was a recently discharged soldier who needed to visit the base medical facility for follow-up treatment related to a service-connected injury. Her fabricated medical records had been carefully constructed to require multiple appointments and consultations, giving her legitimate reasons to spend extended time on the base. The first challenge was getting through the front gate. Despite her discharge, Maria still possessed military identification that hadn't been formally revoked, and her name remained on approved visitor lists for medical appointments. The security guards were professional but not particularly suspicious. Discharged veterans visiting military medical facilities was routine, and Maria's paperwork appeared to be in perfect order. Once inside the base, Maria began the delicate process of gathering intelligence while appearing to simply navigate the military bureaucracy. She visited the medical facility first, establishing her legitimate reason for being on base, then began what appeared to be casual exploration of other facilities, while actually conducting detailed surveillance. The communications equipment was stored in Building 47, a nondescript warehouse that showed no external signs of containing millions of dollars worth of advanced military technology. Maria walked past the building several times during the morning, photographing the exterior, noting security cameras, and counting personnel who entered and exited. During her lunch break, she struck up a conversation with a young soldier who was eating alone in the base cafeteria. The conversation appeared casual, but Maria was carefully gathering information about shift schedules, security protocols, and the general layout of the facility. "I used to work in logistics before my discharge," she told the soldier. "It's amazing how much equipment moves through a base like this. That warehouse over by the motor pool must process thousands of items every week." "Building 47?" the soldier replied. "Yeah, that place is always busy. They've got some kind of special shipment this week that has everyone working overtime. Extra security, special handling procedures, the whole 9 yards." "Sounds like expensive equipment," Maria said with apparent casualness. "Must be. They've got armed guards on 12-hour shifts instead of the usual 8-hour rotation. Plus some kind of electronic security system that's way more sophisticated than normal warehouse stuff." Maria filed away this information while continuing the conversation about general base operations. The soldier was young and enthusiastic about his work, happy to discuss military procedures with someone who understood the technical details. He had no idea that he was providing intelligence to someone who was supposed to be facilitating a robbery. But as the conversation continued, Maria found herself struggling with the moral complexity of her situation. This young soldier trusted her because she was a veteran, because she shared his understanding of military life and values. He was giving her information that could theoretically be used to steal equipment that his unit might depend on for survival in combat situations. The internal conflict became even more intense during the afternoon, when Maria managed to gain access to Building 47 itself. Using her medical appointment as cover, she claimed to be looking for a friend who worked in logistics. The security guard at the building entrance was suspicious but not alarmed, especially when Maria presented legitimate military identification and spoke with the confidence of someone familiar with military procedures. Inside the warehouse, she was able to photograph the general layout, note the locations of security cameras, and observe the procedures used by personnel handling sensitive equipment. Everything she saw confirmed that this was indeed a high-value target with sophisticated security measures. But as she watched soldiers carefully handling communication devices that would soon be shipped to combat zones, Maria realized with stark clarity that she was gathering information that could result in American troops losing vital equipment they needed to survive. Even though she knew the theft would never actually take place, the moral weight of appearing to betray these soldiers was almost overwhelming. The breaking point came when she overheard a conversation between 2 technicians who were testing the communications equipment. "This gear is going to save a lot of lives in Afghanistan," one of them said. "The units over there have been operating with communication systems that are 10 years old. This new stuff will let them coordinate operations more effectively and call for backup when they need it." "My brother's deployed over there right now," the other technician replied. "He's told me how frustrating it is when their radio equipment fails at critical moments. This upgrade can't come soon enough." Maria felt her hands shaking as she pretended to examine logistics paperwork while actually recording the conversation. She was gathering intelligence about equipment that would protect soldiers like this man's brother, equipment that the trafficking network wanted to steal and sell to the highest bidder. By the end of the day, Maria had collected all the intelligence information that Jennifer had requested. She had detailed photographs of the warehouse exterior and interior, complete information about security procedures and shift schedules, and precise timing for the equipment delivery and storage processes. If she transmitted this information to the trafficking network, they would have everything they needed to plan a successful theft. That evening, she met with her real handlers in a secure location to review the intelligence she had gathered. General Hayes was present, along with the same 2 officers who had briefed her weeks earlier. "The network is more sophisticated than we initially realized," Maria reported. "They knew exactly what equipment was being delivered, when it would arrive, and approximately how it would be stored. Someone with high-level access is providing them with detailed military information." "Did you identify any suspects during your surveillance?" General Hayes asked. "No direct evidence, but I noticed several things that suggest inside involvement. The security protocols for the communications equipment were changed just 3 days ago, but Jennifer knew about the enhanced security when she briefed me on the operation. That information wouldn't be available to outside observers." One of the other officers leaned forward with interest. "What specific changes were made to the security protocols?" "They added armed guards to the overnight shifts and installed additional electronic surveillance equipment. But more importantly, they changed the storage location within the warehouse. The equipment is now being kept in a different section than originally planned." "And Jennifer knew about these changes?" "She provided me with detailed instructions for photographing the correct storage area. There's no way she could have known the location unless someone told her about the last-minute changes." General Hayes nodded grimly. "That narrows down our list of potential inside sources significantly. Only about 12 people had access to the revised storage plans." "There's something else," Maria said. "During my surveillance, I observed what appeared to be a dry run of the planned theft. A civilian vehicle drove past the warehouse several times during shift changes, and the occupants appeared to be photographing the facility." "Did you get photographs of the vehicle or the occupants?" Maria handed over her camera, which contained dozens of surveillance photographs from throughout the day. "I managed to get clear shots of the license plate and at least one of the occupants. If this is the same team that plans to conduct the actual theft, you'll have photographic evidence of their pre-operational surveillance." The officers spent several minutes reviewing Maria's photographs, making notes and comparing images with information from other sources. Finally, General Hayes looked up with an expression of satisfaction. "Excellent work, Sergeant Santos. This intelligence gives us everything we need to shut down this operation and identify the people involved. The question now is how to proceed without compromising your cover identity." "I've been thinking about that," Maria said. "Jennifer is expecting me to transmit the intelligence information tonight. If I don't provide it, or if I provide false information, she'll know that something went wrong. But if I provide accurate information, I'll be facilitating the theft of military equipment." "Actually," one of the other officers said with a slight smile, "you'll be facilitating something else entirely. We've spent the last week preparing a very special surprise for anyone who tries to steal equipment from Building 47. General Hayes explained that the communications equipment in the warehouse had been replaced with sophisticated tracking devices designed to look identical to the real systems. If stolen, the fake equipment would transmit detailed location information while appearing to function normally during initial testing. More importantly, General Hayes continued, "We've identified and arrested the inside source who was providing information to the trafficking network. It was Major Patricia Walsh from the Logistics Command. She was providing detailed information about equipment deliveries in exchange for substantial financial payments." Maria felt a surge of satisfaction at learning that the traitor had been identified and captured. But she also realized that her undercover mission was probably coming to an end. If you've arrested the inside source, won't the trafficking network realize that their operation has been compromised? Not immediately, General Hayes said. Major Walsh's arrest will be kept quiet for several days while we use the intelligence she provided to identify other members of the network. During that time, we expect them to proceed with the planned theft, which will walk them directly into a trap. What role do I play in that trap? You provide the intelligence information as planned, then withdraw from direct involvement while we monitor their response. If they proceed with the theft, they'll be arrested in the act. If they become suspicious and call off the operation, we'll have enough evidence from your undercover work to prosecute them for conspiracy and attempted theft of military equipment. 2 days later, Maria sat in a coffee shop across town, watching through the window as Jennifer Caldwell was arrested by FBI agents. The trafficking network had indeed proceeded with their planned theft, walking directly into a coordinated law enforcement operation that had been waiting for them at the warehouse. The fake communications equipment had functioned perfectly, leading authorities to additional storage locations, money laundering operations, and international contacts who were involved in the broader conspiracy. Within a week, 17 people had been arrested in connection with the weapons trafficking network, including 3 active-duty military officers and 5 defense contractors. But the most satisfying moment came when Maria was officially reinstated to active duty with full honors and recognition for her intelligence work. General Hayes personally presented her with commendations for exceptional service that formally acknowledged her contributions to national security. Staff Sergeant Santos, General Hayes said during the private ceremony, "Your willingness to sacrifice your reputation and risk your safety in service to your country represents the highest traditions of military service. The weapons trafficking network you helped destroy was responsible for the deaths of American soldiers who were killed by equipment that should never have left American military installations."
Maria looked down at the commendations in her hands, then at the Ghost Recon tattoo on her shoulder that had started this entire adventure.
Thank you, General. But I have to ask, what happens to Colonel Davidson? Colonel Davidson has been relieved of command and is facing court-martial for sexual harassment and abuse of authority.
His actions provided the perfect cover for your undercover operation, but they were still completely unacceptable violations of military law and basic human dignity. And what about my official military record? Does it still show that I was discharged for misconduct? General Hayes smiled. Your official record now shows that you were assigned to classified intelligence operations that required separation from normal military status. Anyone who reviews your file will see commendations for exceptional service rather than misconduct allegations. Your reputation has been completely restored. As Maria walked away from the ceremony, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. 3 months ago, she had been standing nearly naked in a colonel's office, facing discharge in disgrace based on false accusations. Today, she was a decorated intelligence operative who had helped bring down a major weapons trafficking network. The experience had taught her that truth has a way of emerging, even when powerful people try to suppress it. It had shown her that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons but with courage, integrity, and the willingness to sacrifice personal comfort for a greater cause. Most importantly, it had proven that the values represented by her Ghost Recon tattoo, honor, commitment, and service in the shadows, were more than just ideals. They were principles worth risking everything to defend. 6 months later, Maria received new orders for an overseas assignment that would once again take her into classified operations. But this time, she knew that her superiors understood and valued her contributions. This time, she was serving with the full support and recognition she had always deserved. And this time, when she looked at her Ghost Recon tattoo in the mirror, she saw not just a memorial to past service, but a promise of future dedication to protecting her country and her fellow soldiers, no matter what challenges lay ahead.